welcome back. I don't need to say anything else at this moment, so let's go! Number 15. Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Going back to the childhood favorites, eh? Well, why not? Who Framed Roger Rabbit is probably one of the most magnificent films that Zemeckis has ever made, let alone a Spielberg movie that he would also go to produce. While this is technically based off of a book by Gary K. Wolfe, it differs itself a little bit that I guess you don't need to read the book to know about this movie, because basically Roger Rabbit is in its own dimension. Let me talk about that. It's 1947, and what if there was a world where cartoons are made like how movies are made? Like, you got your cartoon characters here, you got all your props and everything, and all the toony action happens, and you're at the directing chair, giving them the keys on what to do next, when to call it stop. That's Roger Rabbit, and in the realm that this movie takes place. Detective Eddie Valiant is put on a job by R.K. Maroon to spy on Jessica Rabbit, aka Roger Rabbit's girlfriend. But one day happens when, mysteriously, Marvin Acme, the head of the Acme warehouse, as well as the sole owner of Toontown, is murdered by a mysterious somebody, and Roger Rabbit is framed for it. And at first, Valiant doesn't take the order because he doesn't care. He doesn't give two flying rats about helping cartoons out since, well, his brother was killed. You'll know what I'm talking about if you've seen it. But basically, at first he doesn't want to help Roger solve the case. But as time goes on, basically he decides, I guess, and goes on a quest to find the clues, find the evidence, and figure out where on earth is the person who really killed Marvin Acme. And also Eddie Valiant's dreaded case of trying to figure out the person who killed his older brother. What I can considerably say about Roger Rabbit is the mixture of the live action and animation is superb. Out of everything you could see in this day and age for a live-action animated feature. But while on production of the movie, the animation was actually done by a group of people led by Richard Williams. Now, you may not be familiar with this guy, but a few of the animated openings for the Pink Panther movies, he did a few of those. He animated a Chuck Jones-produced Christmas Carol animation. He did a Raggedy Ann and Andy film. And he also did this little movie that was butchered in the end and considerably was his masterpiece, but failed in the end, was the one called The Thief and the Cobbler. With him and his knowledge of how animation works, he was the perfect animator to have been picked for this. Because not only did they animate this perfectly well with what Zemeckis had in mind with the movie, but the other thing is the lighting on them and the way that they leave their prints on certain stuff and how everything flies, almost interacting with the tunes. Magnificent, Richard. Magnificent job. In fact, very impressive that he earned a Technical Achievement Award for such. The other thing is Bob Hoskins, who plays the detective, is amazing. Like, he was an underrated actor, and definitely he should have gotten, like, some sort of Oscar nomination for this, but his portrayal of Eddie Valiant is magnificent, down to the point where he's actually interacting with not only Roger, but also with the cartoons. And keep this in mind, they had to act as if they were looking at the toons, they were interacting with them. Make sure that they're looking them in the eye. And Bob Hoskins nailed it. The other one is Christopher Lloyd as the antagonist, the one called Judge Doom. A guy who's so menacing, he does not even blink. Think I'm lying when I say that? Watch the movie again. Look at his eyes. He never blinks for a second. What's also very impressionable is how they managed to get all of these IPs together. Like, Disney has a whole catalog of characters here, but they've also brought in stuff from, like, Universal. So they brought Woody Woodpecker, they brought Droopy Dog from MGM, but also they brought in the Looney Tunes from Warner Brothers. Yeah, they brought in the Looney Tunes for a Disney movie. Well, technically this was released by Touchstone Pictures, but technically falls under the Disney Buena Vista. Or is it Buena Vista? Whatever the case may be, it's technically a Disney film. But when it came down to the perfect illustration of all these animated characters and the screen time they have, heck, even the portions they show of Toontown, magnificent. The best that you could ever see. And I give Zemeckis and Richard Williams, God bless his soul, the credit that they deserve. They brought us a really amazing film that throughout the 80s and 90s just blew up. Because as after Roger Rabbit was released, there was suddenly an influx of rides at Disneyland. There was a couple of animated shorts that they've made for some of the theatrical movies. Like, they made a Roger Rabbit cartoon before Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Loads and loads of cartoons and lots of merchandise that came out of it. Roger Rabbit definitely deserves the highest credit and the best film that Richard Williams has ever produced, next to the one that sadly never ever got finished under his control. With Roger Rabbit, it's a great story, cast, characters, animation, the composition, and an overall tone and atmosphere, and little things that you may not notice the first time viewing it. It really makes Roger Rabbit a treat, and definitely a cartoon that is worthy of my rewatch. Even if I've seen it a bunch of times when I was a kid, I will still love Roger Rabbit. Magnificent in its beautiful sense, it makes me wish that Toontown was a reality.
Number 14.
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. You know what's better than a movie loosely based on a book? How about a movie that's actually based on a book that feels like an absolute masterpiece? That is the case for this movie, featuring Jack Nicholson as Randall McMurphy. He decides that potentially it's more easier to go into a mental institute than to prison. And he takes advantage of this and pretends to be a little bit psychotic. And during his stay in the institute, he winds up getting the other patients into a bit of mischief. Whether it be them playing poker with cigarettes, or taking them out of the ward to go fishing, or in that matter, all types of crazy stuff that I can't say in this. But one of the nurses that's in charge of the ward, Nurse Ratchet, played by Louise Fletcher, and she wants to prevent McMurphy from causing chaos in the facility. It's a character that you love to hate. We all had to know at least somebody that was a Nurse Ratchet. And maybe somebody that was a Randall McMurphy. And truthfully, both Jack Nicholson and Louise were the best cast to pick for this. I think what makes One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest win me over is you want to cheer on for McMurphy because he wants to liven up the place, and you love to hate Nurse Ratchet, and the personality of some of these patients, you just gotta love them. I mean, I love Martini as it is, but I also love Chief, this big, tall, silent guy that McMurphy is trying to teach him something that he doesn't know, like how to play basketball, or teaching him to speak, and even trying to get him to raise his hand. And even Chief starts to take a liking to McMurphy, and sort of becomes his best friend till the end. On top of a really good story and great direction by Milos Forman, who would actually later on to go and create another Oscar-winning movie, Amadeus, which, speaking of Oscars, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest won several Academy Awards, including Best Picture, and I'm not alone to say this, but Cuckoo's Nest, it deserved that Oscar. From the great story, characters, direction, choice of style they pick for it, and even using a Northwestern location for the movie, which makes the movie very pretty to look at. Cuckoo's Nest just has a good sense of atmosphere and acting and scenery. It just makes it brilliant, and I will definitely hail it as one of my favorite movies from the 70s. If you have this movie in a bucket list of films you want to see before you die, this is one of them. I love Jack Nicholson's performance, the scenery the movie has to offer, the extras, the choice of style they went with for the movie. It's essentially one of my favorite movies from the 70s, and I will never forget this movie at all. Number 13. Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Alright, now here's a film I've been wanting to talk about for a while. Unless you've been living under a rock for the past 45 years, let me kind of show you up to speed what this is. Monty Python is a comedic troupe from the UK. They had some success with their show, Monty Python's Flying Circus. Absolutely hilarious, recommend it. They've shown success with their movies, Life of Brian and The Meaning of Life, and this movie as well. And some of the actors have gone off to see successful comedic venues. I mean, John Cleese in Fish Called Wanda and Fawlty Towers, and you've got Terry Gilliam doing Lord knows what he's doing. But before all that, there was, of course, all those series that I've mentioned beforehand with Monty Python. And where do I start with the Holy Grail? It's on the list of the personal favorite comedies out there of all time. For right reasons, what could it be? The story of King Arthur, whom is searching for knights to be a part of his round table in his quest to seek the Holy Grail. And just from there, it's hilarity and hijinks ensued. You might have seen bits and pieces of this movie's portions of just pure hilarity all over the internet. Everything from the taunting French guy to the Knights of the Round Table, the Killer Rabbit. It's hard to say what makes it stand out, what makes it genuinely gold. But I can assure you that even if you do try to watch Holy Grail without knowing a thing about Monty Python, you're in for an interesting ride. I don't really know what makes Monty Python's brain work when it comes to their way of making comedy work, but they pulled out all the stops for this. They know what works for the comedic effect. They know just the sporadic out-of-nowhereness they will pull off, especially what they did in Flying Circus. It's just the story of King Arthur gathering up knights to be a part of his round table and join in the quest to find the Holy Grail. And just from there, hijinks ensue. A lot of fourth wall breaking here and there. A scene that comes straight out of nowhere, which I won't dare give away. It's absolutely hilarious and comedic gold. It's hard to describe what makes Holy Grail stand out as one of the best comedies that I have seen. It could be just like a lot of the humor from Flying Circus. A lot of this stuff you don't expect to happen. And again, it's one of those few things where you might have seen a clip of this movie online somewhere. But even if this is your first time watching the movie, you're in for an interesting ride. Even I was only familiar with like small pieces of Holy Grail here and there, whether or not it be the clips on YouTube or some of my parents' earlier viewings when I was more younger and they watched the movie. But even then, even if I wasn't familiar with Holy Grail and I did watch it for the first time years later, I still didn't expect what I was going to see out of Holy Grail. Out of nowhere comedy, pure laughs, tons of fourth wall breaks. I could laugh my tail off for hours on end, even after the movie is finished. Even the beginning alone is enough to sell you. It just can't be described on how Holy Grail works. You have to see it for yourself. Out of everything that Monty Python had, I'd probably put this probably next to Meaning of Life as one of the great Monty Python movies they've ever made. With Flying Circus being on the top, of course. But if you want a comedy that's based upon medieval times, that has a lot of jokes that go out of nowhere, I definitely suggest you watch The Holy Grail. It'll help get the laughter out of your chest. Trust me, you'll thank me later once you've actually watched Monty Python and The Holy Grail. Genuine comedy, very perfect, one of my favorites out of the Monty Python franchise.
Number 12.
The Wizard of Oz. Any generation, I can guarantee you, has at least seen The Wizard of Oz once at some point in their life. And why not? It's one of, if not the highly regarded family films of all time. It was directed by Victor Fleming, who also directed the highly acclaimed Gone with the Wind, and features Judy Garland as Dorothy, a teenage girl from Kansas whom dreams of seeing what's over the rainbow. And over that said rainbow is the Land of Oz, a colorful place full of colorful characters, the Munchkins, the Good Witch, the Bad Witch, Oz himself. She accidentally squishes one of the bad witches and winds up with the slipper. which of course leads to Dorothy having to travel to the Land of Oz to ask the wonderful Wizard of Oz himself, "How do I get these shoes off?" in a politeful manner. While traveling along the way, coming across a colorful cast of characters like the Tin Man, Scarecrow, and the Cowardly Lion. Now, truth be told here, I never, at least in my memory, has ever seen The Wizard of Oz as a kid. I was somewhere in middle school when I first saw this movie. And truth be told, I don't regret it. I've seen the movie countless times after that point, and I see why this movie holds up with each viewing of it. In my opinion, that hasn't already been said before, the story is great, even if they diverge a bit from the original books, which I've read in high school. The characters are really great, the songs are memorable, astonishingly beautiful setting, and it overall is a magnificent film that I can guarantee you your parents or your grandparents have shown to you once in their lives. No matter if I'm going to rewatch this movie physically or on cable with commercials, The Wizard of Oz will remain in my mind and in my heart as one of, if not the best, the king's, the one Titan family film that cannot be demolished.
Number 11.
Spirited Away. So when it comes to Studio Ghibli, I may guarantee you might have seen one of their movies once as a kid. They're big, they're grand, magnificent films, ranging from like fantasy-like stories to films that are relatable in modern times, have strong leads, great stories that are kinda improvised on the spot as they make the movies. That exception also carries out to Spirited Away. Probably the most well-known of the Ghibli films, next to My Neighbor Totoro and Kiki's Delivery Service and Nausicaa, The Valley of the Wind, Princess Mononoke. Will be here forever if I were to name every Ghibli movie. The story on this one is about Chihiro, whom is moving to a new town, and she basically is in a little bit of denial because she doesn't want to move away from her friends and anything. And as the parents are trying to find their new home, they find this little shrine. Chihiro walks around for a little bit and comes across this bathhouse right in the middle of the shrine. As Chihiro goes back to them, unfortunately they have been, as titled in the movie, spirited away. And Chihiro has to go to this bathhouse, work there, and find a way to survive until she can figure out how to get her parents back and get out of there. The one thing I have to say about this movie that probably has already been said before is it looks great. Ghibli never disappoints with their animation or their storytelling, even if it's made up on the fly as they're making the movie. The lead I really like, and some of the side characters in the bathhouse are also really memorable, including the one called No Face. The movie received, much like other Ghibli films, high regards as the finest film out there, and probably on an animation list of films you should see before you die. And you want to know just how big that Spirited Away turned out? It was the first anime movie to win the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature. You cannot make those words up. It was that great of a movie. The other thing I could see of this movie being like is an underdog story. Really think on it. In the beginning of the movie, she's scared of anything. She's timid. She doesn't know what to do. But over time, like, her storyline just grows further and further. And you might understand where I'm going at with this. In regards, animation's perfect, music's wonderful. The dub actors do a magnificent job of the film. I haven't watched it in the original Japanese language. Come at me. But Spirited Away is brilliant in every right. You might have seen this once digitally, you may have owned it physically, or what have you. But Spirited Away is a great film. Obviously, it will not be forgotten, taking into account how big the fan base for anime is, as well as people who don't like anime as a whole, but still like the movie either way. But anyways, Spirited Away, great film, watch it, highly recommend it, check it out.